When I'm sitting in the car with my mom or my dad, they see things, and so they stop, and I don't see those things. There's so much to take in with all the different cars coming, and I have to keep track of which traffic light is the one I pay attention to, and which one is for the cars, and which one is the other direction, and the sun, and the honking, and unpredictable drivers. The thought of being one of those drivers was just horrifying to me.
Asperger's syndrome is a term that has been grouped under the general heading of autism spectrum disorder. There's a great deal of variability in estimates of prevalence of adults with Asperger's syndrome. Some range from 0.03% to 5% of our population. And this is largely due to the fact that there's different criteria used for diagnosis.
Everybody with Asperger's syndrome is different. There are a constellation of challenges, and no one has all of them.
There's no clear path for individuals with Asperger's syndrome who are trying to make decisions about driving.
The diagnosis of Asperger's alone is no more predictive of driving ability than the diagnosis of Parkinson's would be for somebody older of driving ability. Every patient is different. You cannot make a conclusion about driving safety on the basis of diagnosis alone.
From the research point of view, we have been asking questions of how parts of the brain connect with each other and whether those connections are abnormal in the setting of autism spectrum disorder. We know there is a lot of variability between different types of forms of autism and forms of Asperger's, and we want to understand, are there any common abnormalities? If we were to look at the brain of somebody with autism or Asperger's syndrome, it would basically look completely normal. There are abnormalities at the microscopic level and in terms of the connections between brain areas. Sort of a diffuse problem. It's not one spot that creates the difficulties. And so this temporal parietal junction is particularly related to things that we call theory of mind, and that refers to the ability to get into somebody else's mind and try to guess what they are thinking. Okay. These are abilities that people with Asperger's and autism do poorly. What we have found in individuals with autism spectrum disorder is that the brain is changed too easily. It's modified too readily. They have what we call hyperplasticity, excessively easy modifiable brains. The net result of that is that they are hypersensitive to inputs. It's not that they receive more information into their brain than neurotypicals do. They receive the same. It's that their brain is not capable of deploying the resources necessary to quiet it down.
Driving often comes up as one of the most highly charged issues, with patients with Asperger's and their families often arguing on all sides of the coin. Driving brings adults to their knees because they are so worried about the safety issues, yet on the other hand, so wanting to promote the maximum level of independence for their adult child.
My mother was worried about the whole fact that I was autistic. She wasn't sure if I was really ever supposed to be allowed to drive. I think one of her biggest concerns was that I was going to hit somebody. There's a lot of things you need to be cognizant of and really try to keep in focus. For me, it was the issue of being able to not take it all in, but keep it all in. Constantly going through your mind and have the ever-revolving checklist going. I need to look for projections, I need to check my rearview mirror, I need to scan, I need to be cognizant of what my speed is, and so on and so forth.
Our focus groups that we did at the Asperger's Association of New England was so instructive. We heard from a group of young adults with Asperger's about the variability in their experiences, both as drivers and non-drivers.
Worrying can be one thing that can be on, I think it's on everybody's mind when they first go for their permit.
It wasn't so much as the driving teacher talking to me. It's more like concentrating on everything on the road.
I didn't have any problem with the written part. I did fail the first time I tried to get the driving test.
I make mistakes all the time in life. I make mistakes when I'm shopping, I bump into people, I walk into people, I have spatial issues. You know, I make mistakes, but when you're on your feet, if you make a mistake, it's not such a big deal. If you're in a car, if you make a mistake, you can kill someone.
One of the liabilities and difficulties of an individual with Asperger's in the driving situation is their ability to read the road. The same capacity that allows a person to read social expressions allows them to kind of read the climate of the road. Then there's also the capacity of being able to kind of read what's going on with pedestrians. And that's what our driving remediation specialists, who are skilled in this, can help the young driver figure out.
I would often have parents come up to me and ask me, can my child drive? So I came up with a way to assess somebody's ability to drive that has an autism spectrum disorder condition, looking at multi-factors. The first component is a clinical evaluation. There's a second component of looking at life skills, and that's, does this individual have the pre-driving skills or the life skills needed to be successful? The last part of the evaluation is the passenger activities, looking at whether the individual can process what they're seeing quickly enough and problem solve out in the community.
Miriam was a miracle. There's no other word for her. She's just a wonder to be taught by.
So watch this van coming out here. It's coming out to the stop, and then
He stops, he pulls out. That's pretty smooth.
yep.
It's that difficulty of coordinating or multitasking many elements all at once. And if your driving is just the epitome of that, when you think about all you're doing as a driver. The most important thing that I think I can always advise people when it comes to training is break down tasks of driving to their most simple elements so that the individual can master that before you add on another layer.
Drive Advise is a clinical program that was developed in the Cognitive Neurology Unit at Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center in Boston.
We really wanted to create Drive Advise as a way of understanding who might be safe to drive and who might not be safe.
The right ingredients for safe driving include perceptual abilities, processing speed, capacity for mental flexibility, capacity for judgment, and we have chosen tests that probe those aspects of perception and cognition as well as physical fitness.
What I'm going to do now is I'm just going to give you some numbers, and I just want you to give them back to me.
We really need an objective assessment of driving in order to help people decide what they need to work on in order to move forward with this decision. First and foremost, I counsel parents and I counsel adults or teenagers to have an open mind about the driving question.
People with Asperger's syndrome, they want a full life. They want to be able to work at the job that best fits them. They want to be able to go to school. They want to be able to commute, to have social lives, and driving is really a key component of that.
And I know it's inconvenient when someone doesn't drive, but it's better to have it be inconvenient and be safe.
It's like, take your time with it till you feel you're ready, but don't let Asperger's keep you from not getting it.
Just because somebody at 16 or 18 we find is not safe to drive at that particular juncture doesn't mean that with time and maturity things won't change. I tend to be optimistic and hopeful, and I try to transmit that optimism to the patients and the families that we see.